Hi, welcome to this special episode of Just Another Knitting Podcast. I'm Bibi.
And I'm Stephen.
And we are Just Another Knitting Podcast. So we recently went to Wairarapa Wool Weekend, which was amazing. But this episode is, we had an opportunity to, with another couple of podcasters, to interview the keynote speaker and masterclass person, Gudrun Johnston, and awesome. So with Barbara from the OI podcast and Allanah from Thank You for Knitting, we had the opportunity to film a podcast with Gudrun, asking her some questions. So we thought we'd release it as a separate episode. You'll have to excuse the sound. We were outdoors, so it might sound a little different from our normal. And because we didn't know in advance that we were doing it, we didn't have any of our equipment, so it was filmed.
Very impromptu.
Yeah, very much on the go, just with our phones. So we really hope you enjoy this special episode.
And it's so amazing to have you here. And thank you also to James, who's hiding in the background there behind the cameras, for organising the Wairarapa Wool Week Festival. And we are so privileged to have you here for our podcasts. And we're doing a special joint podcast today. So today we have myself from the OI, the Otago Institute for Arts and Sciences. And we also have Allanah.
Mm-hmm. Hello.
And would you like to tell us all about your podcast, Allanah?
Oh, I have a podcast called Thank You for Knitting, and I own a wool shop in Auckland called Lupine Wool Company, and I design under Black Hat Knit Co. I'm the company.
It's a fantastic shop as well.
Oh,
and we also over here have Bibi and Stephen.
Hi.
I'm Phoebe.
And I'm Stephen.
And we're Just Another Knitting Podcast.
Not just another knitting podcast, but another knitting podcast. And what's your fantastic knitting podcast called?
Just another knitting
podcast.
That's fantastic.
New Zealanders have this way of naming things as they are, and that's what we embrace that.
Yeah.
And I have a knitting podcast
And
too.
you have a knitting podcast as well.
That's called Shetland Trader Chats.
It's fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah, we were just watching it this morning.
Yes, that's right.
Thank you.
So we are just here for a bit of a chat, really, because we've got you here. You are the superstar from the Shetland Island all the way. Now, have you come from
It
Shetland?
actually says that on my name badge.
Yes, Shetland superstar. Have you come actually from the Shetlands? to get here?
No. And you can't call it the Shetlands. Do you know that?
I didn't know that.
No.
Yes.
The Shetland Islands or just Shetland. So whenever someone says it, I have to immediately correct them. Sorry. But no, I have not come from Shetland. I have come from Massachusetts for this trip, which was still a long way.
And what is the Shetland Trader doing in Massachusetts? May we ask?
The Shetland Trader married an American 27-ish years ago, and that's how I ended up in this country. With some time spent back in Scotland, including some time in Shetland. Many trips to Shetland.
But you have a long family history with Shetland.
Yes, my great-grandparents are from Shetland, and I was born there, but I mostly grew up in mainland Scotland. So my parents left Shetland when I was 5, and I grew up partly on the west coast of Scotland in Edinburgh, and met my husband in Edinburgh, ended up over here. My parents retired back to Shetland 20 years ago, and that coincided with when I was starting to design knitwear, so really getting into it at that point. So really from the early days of visiting them in Shetland, as well as reacquainting myself with Shetland, because I didn't really remember it from being a kid there. And we didn't visit much, from mainland Scotland, but still a long trip up to Shetland. So I wasn't very connected to it growing up, really. But when they retired, we would visit them, and I was knitting, so I was immediately exploring the knitting traditions. That was one of the first things I did. They very kindly moved next door, essentially, to Jameson's mill. So I immediately was loading up on yarn from the mill on one of my very first trips there. And I've been able to visit a lot over those 20 years, so I've gotten to know it as an adult. And it's very much influenced, my whole knitting journey and design and all of that. And now I'm the brand director for Simply Shetland, which distributes Jameson's yarn in North America. So it's a big full circle for me. And I certainly feel like I come from Shetland now, like that. But that has been over the course, of these past 20 years, like as an adult, getting to know it again and being connected. Not just via extended family, but the knitting aspects. Yeah.
So did you start as a knitter or a designer? Because you've got designing in your family, haven't you?
Yes, my mum designed knitwear in Shetland in the 70s when I was a baby and a toddler. She was not a knitter, so she did not teach me to knit. And when my parents left Shetland, she wasn't involved in anything textile related after that. So again, growing up, it wasn't like I was surrounded by that. I knew Mum had done it, and she had kept, some photos and things like that, and a few pieces of knitwear, that she had designed. I started as a knitter. I learned to knit as a kid, probably, 9 or something like that.
Who taught you to knit?
It was a school teacher on an island on the west coast of Scotland. So we lived for 5 years on the Isle of Rum, which is in the Inner Hebrides. And it's a very small island, small community. At one point, it was just me and my younger brother at the school.
Oh, wow.
And it was a nature reserve when we lived there. So you only lived on the island if you had a job in relation to a nature reserve. My dad was the warden.
What's a warden? Is that like...
It's
is
like,
it like a
he was
sheriff,
called
or
the
is it
chief
like a
warden. It's not like it's nothing like
a
police
ranger?
related. Yes, it's nature.
It's nature
conservancy. Yes, nature related. So he was kind of in charge of the running of the island and protecting various aspects of it. And there was no secondary school on the island, so my older brother boarded on Skye the whole time that we lived there. Anyway, that's where I learned to knit. I remember a school teacher taught me, and pretty sure I knit like a pastel-y coloured vest in an acrylic-y yarn. That's what I remember, sort of squeakiness of the yarn and stuff. And then I didn't really do it, until I was an adult. And actually, we had moved to Massachusetts for the first time, and because we've moved there multiple times, we keep going back to Massachusetts.
I feel like there's a song there somewhere.
There must be, yes. There is. I'm pretty sure there is.
Yeah.
And my daughter, there was 5 at the time, and somebody else had made her a blanket. I think it was actually a crocheted blanket, and she was super attached to it, and we unfortunately lost it in the Reykjavik, the Iceland airport, Keflavik, on our move over, and I was like, we're not getting that back. And I walked past this yarn store in Northampton, Massachusetts, which is called Northampton Wools, and I saw this poncho in the window, and I was like, maybe I could make her something, and I went in and asked for the pattern and the yarn and everything, and I remember the person I spoke to sort of saying, do you know how to like pick up stitches? And because it was 2 rectangles, but you did have to pick up stitches after you joined them for the neckband. I had no idea what she was talking about. I was like, I know. For some reason, I was too proud to say no clue what you're talking about. And I think my first book was like The Idiot's Guide to Knitting or something like that, And I was like, I just went for it. Yeah. Made it. Maya, my daughter, absolutely loved it, wore it to death when she was, a little kid. She still has it. She's 25 now, and actually she just moved out to San Francisco. Before she left, she was like, Mom, poncho's kind of falling apart. Could you fix it? And she brought it, and it was just completely coming apart, just at the seams. It was like my first seaming, but even so, 20 years later we're talking about.
That's pretty impressive.
So I gave it a refresh, and off she went, took it with her. So that was really kind of my launch into knitting again. And that whole area, I was meeting a lot of other mothers, young mothers and stuff like that. It was a very fibery loving area, like lots of people spinning and knitting and stuff like that. So I just got really into the knitting side of things, and then I just started to, as you do, like go off pieced, with patterns, like, maybe I'll just tweak this or do this thing myself, and that was kind of the start of it. But not for selling pattern purposes. It was just I was just kind of making things up,
What inspired you to first sell a pattern?
Well, it was a couple of years after I had started knitting again, and we were living in Colorado at the time, I remember, and I think I had, starting to sort of find other people's blogs, and this was right before Ravelry started, or just right at that time when they were sort of beta testers for Ravelry, and Nitty.com was around, so I was aware of that, and they had this whole thing of like, submit a pattern, and just kind of it was obviously free knitting patterns on there, and so I just kind of on a whim I'd made this skirt for Maya. I'd knit this skirt, and it was made from hempathy yarn, which is Elspeth Lavald's yarn. So it was like hemp and something else, I forget. But actually it had like I used a sort of Shetland lace pattern on it, so it was a stripy skirt, and I'd made it for her, and I thought, maybe I'll just see like what happens, and submitted it, and that was really the start of it, because I had no clue. Like, I didn't have a knitting blog myself at that point, and Amy Singer, who runs Nitty, said, well, you probably should have one when this comes out, because people will want to know more about you. And so I'm like, oh, okay. And so I started a blog, and I needed a name for it. And so I used the Shetland Trader, which was the name of my mum's business when she had it.
And also the books now, right?
Now the books, that was kind of what I ended up publishing under. I mean, I use my own name as well, but it's always been the Shetland Trader, used as well. And that was the blog. So that was the first published design.
So when you're designing, do you design on paper and then do the knitting, or do you design by knitting?
Mostly, certainly in the earlier stages of designing, I had to do the knitting part first and make notes and things like that as I went along. I became able to do a certain amount of the written process ahead of time as I got more experience. And certainly if you were repeating a similar construction or something like that, then you can know, you can kind of go ahead and get a lot of that math done and things like that. But if it's any kind of unusual construction that I haven't quite done before, then I'm always knitting it first. Kind of working ahead of myself a little bit in terms of having information there, but probably not doing any of the grading and stuff like that until I have finished at least one sample myself. Yeah.
And do you do all your own grading?
I do, mostly. The only time I haven't is when I was on the Brooklyn Tweed design team. And we didn't have to.
Oh, lovely.
Which in a way
so was good. A team that
what a luxury to not have to do your own grading.
Yes, I mean, I think I felt a little bit protective of it because, because it's then out of your hands. So we would make one size, and we would make essentially a giant stitch map on Illustrator. So you would actually map out every single stitch for one size, and then that would go to the tech editors, and they would do the grading, so that was the only time that I haven't done my own grading. And I always use, tech editors after I've, applied my math and have it checked and all that kind of thing. But I think I prefer doing my own grading.
It's an art form more than just straight maths. That's what I learned.
It is. And there's a lot of nuances, and it's very challenging because you're working from standard body measurements. But pretty much nobody's body is like that. So, you're trying very hard to sort of accommodate, lots of different sizes and shapes and short torsos, long torsos, you can't write a pattern for everybody. That's unfortunately the reality. But because there are so many tutorials now and so many, and people have had so much exposure to tutorials and classes and everything, thankfully we have a lot more tools to, guide people to resources where they can make modifications, whether it's putting in bust darts or something that they need to do.
And I think that for myself, that's where I find it's really useful, when there's actually not so much the pattern is written with all the... I mean, it's great to have a range of particularly large bust sizes. And a large range of sizes, and a really good indication of whether it's negative ease that you're looking for, or positive ease, or how much. But also in the pattern, when there's a really good indication of if you want to put in a bust dart, here's where you should do it.
Yeah,
if you've
right,
got
exactly.
if you've got like just those kind of general kind of
Yes.
things, rather than just having the pattern written
Just having the
out,
numbers.
but having that kind of general idea of, you know, if
Yes.
you want to have a longer torso,
Yeah.
this is the section that you want to
Yeah.
expand on, and I think that's kind of where it goes from a maths
Yeah.
to an
Yeah.
art,
Yeah.
like you were saying.
Like ideally, every knitter who wants to consistently make themselves garments would learn how to modify for their own body any pattern that they're using.
I think they do, and I'm
Yeah.
sure it's the same. I've only just gotten into sewing, but I know that's
Oh,
going to
yeah.
be the case there too.
Yes.
It's like learning where I need to make adjustments for, you know, various sewing patterns, you know, similarly. Because,
Yeah, when you are designing, I mean, do you design primarily for yourself or the things that you'd like to see, or do you give any sort of consideration for sort of like men's patterns or anything like that?
I've done a few men's patterns, and it's funny that you say that actually, because somebody had posted earlier today all these different sweaters and cardigans that she has made for her husband, I think. And two of them are cardigan patterns that are Brooklyn tweed ones, actually, that I did. And it made me kind of go, oh yeah, I need to do more men's patterns again. So I haven't done that many. I've done those two cardigans, and I have done, I did like a unisex version of my Porty pullover that I have on just now. But I would like to do more. Yeah.
It is amazing how difficult it is to find men's patterns.
It is very much so, and I mean, especially even in the unisex patterns that, you know, that I've seen that often aren't truly unisex.
I don't really believe in
You've got to really look at, you know, in the pattern as to, you know, which parts you actually vary, but you have to make those decisions yourself.
Yeah.
It's nice when you actually do come across, you know, a pattern that you can sort of go, oh, I can knit that,
Yes.
and I can wear it for me.
Yeah.
So it's
Particularly arm to chest ratios are on average different.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
when someone says it's unisex, but it hasn't been graded in that way.
Yeah, we've just been talking about grading for bust sizes, and it's like, yep.
Yeah.
Different bust size.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the body proportions are also different in terms of kind of arm size and
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many modifications
Point
to be
point
made.
push your shoulder.
Yeah.
it's quite different because I want to knit for my son and obviously for Stephen as well, and I'm trying to find there are a very small range of
Yeah.
specifically knit for men patterns, which is really interesting because I guess it's a mostly female industry,
Yeah.
which is great.
Nowadays, I
I
think.
don't know. I mean, it's the same with sewing. Most of the patterns are made for women or children. It's children's patterns as well. But I think it's actually because, like, men's patterns, they're like men's, not you personally, obviously, but men's clothing in this and the last century are generally very boring.
Basic.
Apart from the little blip where the 70s, 80s were, perhaps. But
Not
really,
boring.
in general, like shirt and blazer and trousers or
Yeah.
shorts, and
Yeah.
you know, and it's really
We get more variety.
it's
than they do.
kind of boring. Like
Yeah.
there's not, and the color choices and stuff is the same. It's kind of boring in general for men's wear, and particularly I think in New Zealand as opposed to.
Do you want to fight back, Stephen?
Well, I think New Zealanders are quite conservative in their
I think
dress,
our dress
and
is quite conservative.
wearing this
yeah,
kind
so-
of thing is very out there for
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was uncomfortable wearing this, but I mean, it was interesting that you talked about Brooklyn tweed and your designs for Brooklyn tweed because Brooklyn tweed is where I've found many of the patterns
Yeah.
that I've actually knit because they do
Because
have a
of
good
Jared.
variety.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does.
But, you know, bringing up that notion of sort of like patterns for women and stuff, you know, that also goes the other way, that there are a lot of people using gender neutral, you
Yes.
know, pronouns, including my own kid now.
Yes.
Sage loves to wear and wants to wear things like with the balloon sleeves or like the dress from
Those balloon sleeves are amazing.
from the Shetland Trader, and
right,
you know,
right.
and has worn them, and they look amazing on them, you know.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, we have to obviously be cognizant of that
Absolutely,
aspect,
the
as
changing
well.
ideas of gender and how
Yeah,
that
and
affects
what you're
clothing.
allowed to wear. Like, you know, well, no, that's a woman's pattern, so
Yeah.
you know. But,
What I really like is patterns when they've got the actual dimensions. So
yes,
Doesn't matter. You
So,
just go
yes,
with
so
the
you've
dimensions.
got, okay, well, you've got your bicep dimension
Yeah.
and your chest measurement and your waist and your hip measurement, and
Yeah.
then you can like you're self-graded
whatever.
Yes.
Yeah.
between them.
Which is
And I
why
think-
classes on, sizing and things like that
Yeah.
are some of the most popular ones,
Yeah.
that people want to take because they
see
want
that.
help with that.
Mm.
And yes, as long as you have those dimensions there, then you can look at the separate parts and kind of go, okay, well, I need the chest to be this size, but I don't need the arm, circumference to be that or whatever. Because again, going back to the standard sizing charts, it's sort of like this gets bigger, so therefore everything gets
Everything
bigger. And
gets
it's like,
bigger, yeah.
well, no, and then you get these like really wide
Yes.
necks and things
Yeah.
like that. And
I have that problem all the time because I
Yes.
have quite a large chest measurement, but I have really quite narrow and slopey
Yeah.
shoulders. So everything
Yes.
just falls off my shoulders.
Yeah.
And it's really annoying.
Yeah.
So you want to be
So
able to make
frustrating.
adjustments, and that's the
Yeah.
reason I knit and sew, so I can have something that fits my
Something
body,
that fits,
Exactly.
yeah.
which is fantastic.
And it's really only like in the last 100 years that hasn't been the case because
True.
all of human history before that,
People are making
people's
their own.
clothes were
kit.
made.
They understood,
Either they made
yeah.
them themselves or someone made them for them if they were richer.
Yeah.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
It's really just that ready to wear kind of culture that's come in.
Yeah.
And that's where we're really getting into this fast fashion and, things that are just made to a size.
Yeah.
And that whole sizing system is for
Yeah.
the manufacturing part of it.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
not for
Yeah.
the person who's buying it. It's so that they can have their numbers.
Yeah.
So Gudrun, when you when you knit now, do you knit your own patterns or do you still knit other people's patterns? It must be difficult.
Yeah, I don't have time, unfortunately, to knit other people's patterns very often. I do try and do it like at least once a year, usually it's just a hat of
Just to
somebody
keep your
else or
hand
something
in.
like that. Well,
Yeah.
just to see how somebody else has written a pattern and stuff like that. Like I always learn something from that, like, that way they've done a chart or something like that. So it's not often a garment, unfortunately. I mean, I wish I had the time because there's tons of stuff that comes out that I'm like, I'd like that, but no, I don't very often knit other people's
And
patterns.
you have a lot of strings in your bow as well. So you teach, you knit, you design patterns. You're the brand person for it. So of all of these things, which kind of brings you the most joy? Like which part of your
Really tricky.
varied
I
life?
think it is the designing and like sharing that process because it's lovely to be able to share like as you're doing it and get the enthusiasm as you're working through it because it takes a long time and so when you have to work on something that has to be kept secret, like that's the hardest, especially a book or something. It's like, well, I can't share any of this for like, I don't know, 2 years, depending on how long that process
And
is.
then by the time you can share it, you're over it.
Yeah,
So
you're
you don't
over it.
want to-
It's well done.
Exactly.
In the
That's
past.
news. And I mean, that is definitely something that I think I'm very aware of, and I know lots of other designers are now too, that, there's so much produced and so much new stuff, and there is this sense of like, always having to bring something new out and like churn it out and then forgetting about the old patterns. And I definitely have made an effort over the years to revisit older patterns and maybe it's to revamp them, to do something different with them. I'm actually doing something with this cardigan pattern that was an early pattern that I published with Twist Collective called Audrey and Unst, and it was a cardigan with a little lace, Shetland lace pattern in it.
Oh, it's
so pretty.
And I gave it a revamp a few years ago because it was a fitted cropped cardigan originally. And then a few years ago, I added in a kind of more A-line shape, but still with a lot of the same construction elements. And then now I'm about to release it like as a vest pattern as well.
That sounds lovely.
So it's really nice though to see it get to still be relevant because so many patterns are, but there is this need for, what's the newest thing, or have you hit the latest such and such?
It can be a little bit stressful. Like we have
It
such a
is.
saturated market now of patterns,
is.
which is wonderful and exciting. But
Yeah.
I appreciated that about doing your classes. Like you were talking about we call it feather and fan. I don't know what you call it, but that standard sort of lace, the Shetland
The
lace.
old shell or old
Yeah,
shell.
old shell lace and the garter stitch haps and the Fair Isle and the idea of kind of having one thing. You can do so much with that one thing.
Yes.
I mean, the idea of just having the yarn that you represent, Johnson's, 220 colors of spindrift or something like that. You could just knit for the rest of your life in that yarn.
Yeah,
You could
and
knit
I would be
anything.
perfectly
Yeah.
happy doing that. I would say that having that job, what's nice about it is I can tie in all of the elements that I have done, designing, teaching, working
true.
with this product, which does require education around it, and I have used it, since the beginning of my design days. I have worked in Shetland wool, not exclusively, but yes.
Is that because your mother was associated with the Shetland trader, or
I mean,
her
it just
designs were, or just because you had a Shetland?
I mean, I think because it coincided, like I said, my career coincided at the start of it with them returning to Shetland. And then, yes, I was like looking at the knitting traditions, buying wool there. So my sort of early stash was Shetland wool. And some of the sort of first things I made for my kids, who were, very small at the time, were kind of recreations of things that she had designed for
That's cool.
for me and my siblings as kids, but they were just kind of, I didn't write patterns for them. I just was like, I'll just copy this. So I had Shetland wool in my stash very early on, just because
It's a very Elizabeth Zimmerman type approach to knitting, isn't it?
I guess, yeah.
Do you currently knit with just Jamieson's, or do you also? How often do you knit with other yarns?
At the moment, I don't knit with anything else. I mean, occasionally, like I have some socks, on the go that are in something else, and but mostly, if I'm designing, it needs to be in the Jamieson's, because it needs to be to promote this product, and that is only because of this job. Like there's obviously Jamieson and Smith as well. I've knit lots of things in their yarn,
but they're fairly interchangeable as well.
Between the 2-ply jumper weight and the spindrift, which is also a 2-ply jumper weight, but just has a name. Yes, they are interchangeable. And I don't. There's not like I have a preference of one over the other.
So in North America, how popular is that really woolly wool? Because people have an emphasis on softness.
Yes, they do. I mean, I think that there is a bit of a shift back to it. I do think it's increasing. I mean, I sort of feel like there's always been an interest in it, which there has, obviously, because it's got that sort of traditional quality to it. But I do think that there is a building interest in it. Because, I think we've had the superwash, phase, and that being the only thing that people are working with. And people, again, I think just with more podcasts and classes and education around it, people are realising what the special qualities are of working with a wool like that. The fact that it isn't going to grow, that, just all the aspects that make it what it is, and make it good for specific things like Fair Isle.
But also good for the environment, right? Because particularly the Jamieson's,
and
it's actually grown
yes.
in the Shetlands, and then it's milled in the Shetlands, and
in
then
Shetland.
Sorry, I'm done again.
I just can't help it. I just can't help it.
In Shetland, and then it's dyed there as well, and the Jamieson's and Smith as well. That's sent away, but it's still grown and kind of produced. It's in Scotland, right?
Yes.
So it's
Same shape.
Same shape, close to the origin. Close to the origin.
Yeah.
And of course, it's totally biodegradable as well.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
So in terms of fast fashion or like more sustainable fashion,
yes.
Wool, and particularly wool that's not superwash wool. So as soon as you get that superwash wool, you've got that chemical process which is kind of stripping away the
essence of the wool.
So that is quite a different, and of course adding in nylon, which people will do for sock wool. But you can knit socks from a very high twist. Wool. But I guess that's the. I read Elizabeth Zimmerman's, but she said in the early days of nylon, they used to put whole double the wool with the fishing line, like the nylon that you use for fishing.
That can't be good for your feet. We probably need to wind up soon, but just I'm the timekeeper.
Oh, you're the timekeeper. Oh, goodness. Can I just quickly ask a little bit about the colours? Do you have an arts or a sciences background? So you're going with like a what's your colour theory there?
I definitely don't approach it from a sort of colour theory side of things, as I don't have that art background. I trained as a classical singer when I left school, so it's more just like a sort of palette sense that I come from, you know, just and definitely swatching, you know. What's nice now with this job is that sometimes I have parameters enforced upon me because certain colors are not available, so I just can't use those. You know, I have to use what's in stock, because people want those colors. And if we have a lot of a color in stock, then I'm figuring out a way to like use it. And so it's kind of pushed my own personal like boundaries or whatever on colors that I would potentially choose. I mean, I think that there's a particular aesthetic, whatever, that I'm drawn to, which is maybe more in that like autumnal kind of color range or whatever. You know, people sort of seem to, say, oh, well, that's classic, you know, Gudrun. I wouldn't necessarily think that the same way, but and I, you know, obviously I do learn, I have learned things as I've explored Fair Isle knitting more, and that wasn't part of my early designing. I didn't do color work, so you know that came a bit later. So applying those principles that, you know, are about the contrast, having enough contrast for the motif to stand out and all that kind of thing.
I really like what you were saying about having the background colours kind of go together, so there wasn't a break in them, and the pattern colours go together, and then that pop. That's quite interesting for the motif one.
Like this pop of blue.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't a traditional Fair Isle motif. Like, this yoke is kind of made up of motifs that in a way merge together. So in a way you have more freedom there. But what we were doing like in class...
It's more like the middle of Bibi's there, where she's got that bright top of the purple, but she's sort of got the background as those two dark browns.
Exactly.
But there's clearly two there, but you have to look closely to see
that's, you know, that sort of Fair Isle, that's classic Fair Isle knitting... rules or whatever, is that you're trying not to cut the pattern. You know, talked about that. You're trying not to have too much of a jump between the two background colours and not between the pattern colours too. So I mean, I think about those things for sure, but then it's taste that comes into it for sure.
I wanted to ask a little bit about you coming here. How did it come about? Did James just reach out to you randomly?
Yes. I had decided that we needed to come to see my sister, who lives here. She's been here for 18 years, and we have not visited her. I usually see her back in Scotland, you know, so I'll go over there too when she's there. And I had finally said to my husband, like, okay, like, the kids have left home now, and like we just need to go. And literally 2 weeks later, I think, and we hadn't booked anything, you know, I get a message from James on Instagram. It's like, I'm thinking of, you know, organising this event, and I was wondering if you'd like to be the keynote speaker. And I remember, yes, I know. I'm like running over to my husband, going, guess what? So yes, it's a very much thank you to James for holding this event. That really helped to sort of, you know, make the final decision. Like, okay, we're doing this, and and it's been amazing.
But you've travelled around a little too. What's your favorite part of New Zealand outside of this knitting retreat?
South Island, mainland.
I mean, I think...
Shout out North Island.
I mean, we only flew in and out of Auckland, so I can't speak to Auckland. And we haven't... My sister lives in the New Plymouth area, Taranaki. We haven't gone there yet. Going there next. We had an amazing trip. We did a road trip in the South Island in a camper van and had incredible weather. I can't really pick a favourite part. We had this lovely...
Hobbiton yet, so that will be your favourite.
Yeah, Hobbiton will be the favourite. Go on then.
Yes, that was really special because we had, you know, a big Lord of the Rings fans, and my husband and I had read about Mount Sunday, and we were unsure if we would get there because it's a long dirt road in there, and we were renting a camper van, and they don't let you drive on certain roads. But we did mention it to them, and they said, can you just use your judgment, you know, when you get there? And, you know, it seemed fine. Like, we had to go very slowly, but it did take, a while. So we kind of drove part the way and we were able to camp. And then we did it the next day. And it was very epic. We did a really cheesy, like, moment of, like, blasting Lord of the Rings music as we were driving down into it. Yeah, which was really fun. And there was another couple ahead of us up on the mountain. Not really a mountain, but but then they left and it was just us up there, and it was amazing. Very, very windy. But yeah, that was incredible.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for your time. We really appreciate you taking the time.
Yes, it's been fantastic.
My pleasure. So great to meet you all, and
Hopefully it won't be 20 years between visits.
No,
Can't be.
Yeah, are you going to come back now?
Yeah, because James is going to do one in 2 years' time, and then next year it's Morag and Dunedin.
Well, I know Morag already spoke to me about that. Yeah, she's like, if you're going to be here next year.
Yes, we're going to be here in March.
Yes.
Because Dunedin is fantastic.
Yes, we did stop in Dunedin briefly.
And Oamaru for the doe spins.
Yes, that's right.
Oh, before we stop, I think, before we stop, I want to hear what everyone's wearing.
Oh, yeah.
Because for the sake of the video podcast,
So that's what people want
people
to know.
are going to say, what is everyone wearing? We're all wearing Colorwork jumpers.
Yeah,
That's true.
Start on the
Stephen,
Some point.
start with you.
I'm wearing Troutbeck by Marie Wallen, which I knit myself.
I'm wearing Bressa by Marie Wallen. I had the joy of wearing Bressa on Bressa last year. That was kind of fun.
Yes.
I'm wearing. Oh, sorry, Carrie. What is the yarn?
This is Rebel yarn, same yarn. It's New Zealand.
Oh,
Outlaw
Outlaw
yarn.
yarn.
Nice. Yeah.
Half
Shout
New
out
Zealand,
to
half
Outlaw Yarn
breed
and Deb.
and merino.
really good.
She's got an absolutely amazing colour range.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's not,
Yeah.
James
320.
We will soon be lining up the Jameson's colour wall beside the Rebel.
Next to the Rebel
colour wall, yeah.
Beautiful yarn, and it's very sticky as well.
Yeah,
It's
And
similar
it's very
to
much New Zealand yarn.
yeah. It's similar to Jameson's.
Very nice.
Yeah, it's the most similar that you would get to Jameson's here in New Zealand.
Anyway, let's move on.
I'm wearing the Porty pullover, which is my own pattern, and it comes as a cardigan. It comes in kids' versions. I just made mine with short sleeves, so I got a bit lazy.
Love it.
And it's in Jameson Spindrift.
Of course it is. Well, I'm wearing my design, a Calypso sweater in
Very nice.
Rowan felted tweed and Spit Cycle.
I've seen lots of those this weekend. It's a very popular pattern.
It's
Yeah.
but it's beautiful, right?
It's
and it also
amazing.
comes in a DK, doesn't it?
Yes, yeah. And the Spin Cycle makes the color work easy because you only have one other color.
That's beautiful. I'm wearing something from the 70s, which was knitted for me as a full-size jumper with tight sleeves and a tight neck by one of my relatives, who I unfortunately don't know which one it was. And it's all hand spun natural yarn, except for this one here is dyed. And I suspect it's dyed with a natural dye.
The matter, maybe?
Could have been, yeah. And then I it had holes in it, and it didn't quite fit. Because I'm now not the same size as I was when I was 14.
Yeah.
So I ripped the neck off. So I put this neck here and the cuff bands and the waist here, which is where it was because there was a hole in it. It's matched from the Wild Earth Naturals range. And
That's a lovely New Zealand wool.
That's how it is. Very kind of upcycled.
Yeah.
But the whole outfit is working.
It's very polemic, this outfit. The skirt, in fact. People either think that colour should not be worn as clothes.
Or they love it.
Anyway, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Welcome back. We hope you enjoyed that. We had a lot of fun filming it.
We did.
And it was great to be outside and chit-chat with Gudrun.
She's amazing.
We'll be back next week with another regular episode. And
We will talk all about what we actually did during Wairarapa Wool Weekend and everything we saw, everything we did, everyone we talked to, and everything we purchased.
That's right. We've been very restrained here, just trying to keep everything to a minimum. So at the moment, we'll say goodbye and see you shortly.
See you next week.
Goodbye.